Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome to an early live stream. Usually we do these at 3 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, but thought I would get to this a little bit early today so I can free myself up for later. So I hope you all are doing great. If you are watching, and in the comments, let me know where you're tuning in from. We've got a Washington packed show today. We have some other stuff from around the country that we're going to hit on also. But as a result of that, I am streaming this to our Conservative Ladies of Washington Facebook page, which we usually don't do. So if you're joining us on Facebook, hello to all of you. We are also streaming on my X account and, of course, on YouTube. So if you are new here, please subscribe or follow wherever you are watching from. We have got our leadership team in the chat today with you all. And if you can hear the dinging, they're also in the Telegram chat that's dinging me. So we've got Leslie and Joy, and I think Mary and Jeannie may be joining at some point as well. We have got an action-packed live stream for you today. There's a lot of ground that we are going to be covering. Might get a little bit spicy today because there's a lot of truth that needs to be told, a lot of, maybe some uncomfortable, tough love going to happen today. So anyway, let's get into it right away. So much to cover. Let's start with the West Coast Alliance. This was announced yesterday by Washington Governor Bob Ferguson, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek, and California Governor Gavin Newsom. The three states are forming an alliance because they disagree with the changes being made at HHS and the CDC under RFK Jr.'s leadership. And so they want to be sure that they can give their citizens of their states different advice that goes along with their agenda as far as vaccines and health mandates and all of that stuff. So this is not unexpected, I would say. We saw in Washington state where we are very active, where we have been very active in the legislature this year, there were a couple of bills that really kind of tipped us off that they were trending in this direction. And those were House Bill 1321, which requires any outside militia services to have the consent of the Washington state governor before they can come in. Now, it does allow the president to send in the National Guard with an emergency order. So if you think about like what's going on in Washington, D.C., or the talk about going into Chicago, I'm not sure what that would look like if they were to do that in Washington state. I don't know if there would have to be some kind of special emergency declaration for them to go into Washington state. But Washington isn't the only state that has such a law. Texas has one. I kind of think Idaho does too, but I remember when I was researching the bill, I was looking up, which other states have this because the Washington Democrats that were proposing it said that, they were just getting in line with, some of these other states. I think there's something like 20 states. However, we know that the Washington Democrats did this intentionally with the timing that they did because of the incoming Trump administration. This bill was filed very early in the session, so I believe it was even before Trump took office. But it was easy to see what they were setting themselves up to do. And then they also passed House Bill 1531, which allows the state to have really unprecedented authority to make medical and health mandates and recommendations and guidelines for the entire state. So let's say you live in Eastern Washington and you live in a conservative county and have a pretty conservative health board director that would be relaxed on, let's say, mask mandates or vaccines. You wouldn't need to have a vaccine to go to a restaurant such as you did in King County during COVID. This new law does not allow for local control to make those kinds of decisions. Everything would be top down from the governor's office. So that was another, like, you're not going to be able to make decisions for yourselves. And really, I see that, partly in response to the Trump administration. But if you live in Washington, Oregon, and California, you probably know that there are large pockets of red area. And in Washington state, Eastern Washington is pretty much all red. And so I really think that this was a way for Olympia to have control over those conservative areas that kind of went against the grain. So this was kind of the setup, I think, for this West Coast alliance. And let's take a look at, I want to show you, I did do a video on this yesterday. So if you follow us on YouTube, you may have already seen this, but just want to show you their joint statement. From the three governors, President Trump's mass firing of CDC doctors and scientists and his blatant politicization, it's hard for me to say that word, of the agency, is a direct assault on the health and safety of the American people. The CDC has become a political tool that increasingly peddles ideology instead of science, ideology that will lead to severe health consequences. California, Oregon, and Washington will not allow the people of our states to be put at risk. It's really funny because it just feels like this should be like some kind of parody or irony or something like that, because it's so just backwards of how everything works. And living in Washington during COVID, where Jay Inslee had emergency powers for 975 days, creating a mental health crisis, not just for our young people, but for adults as well. How many people lost their businesses, lost their jobs because they refused to get a vaccine? And so they lost their jobs. You saw a lot of uh, firefighters. You saw a lot of firefighters that lost their jobs because they refused to get the vaccine. There was even, I think it's called East Side firefighters, something, that were pushing back on that, and law enforcement and first responders and just so many people that really their livelihood was so impacted by these, like Jeannie said on the Facebook chat, so dystopian. And this was so really government overreach. Like, I don't think I could have ever imagined it would have been this bad. And then you had other states like Florida, that were open and have really learned the lessons from those first, few weeks, couple months of COVID, and really corrected course. And it was interesting because I was actually putting together a short video on this new legislation that my representative, Greg Stubbe from Florida, has proposed at a federal level. It's called the Grace Act, and it would require every school to give children a religious exemption for vaccines. So this would be federal. So it would apply to everybody across the country. And it's a great bill. I'm Congress is back in session this week, and I'm not sure how long this part of the session is. Congress is an interesting animal to me, but and I know they've got a bunch of funding things to work out. So I don't know if they will get to the Grace Act, but I would think there's an appetite for it with RFK Jr. At the helm at HHS. And if you've been watching any of the testimony that's been going on with RFK Jr. today on Capitol Hill, he's really fired up. And so my hope is that this legislation will pick up steam. It would be huge for people who live in blue states that don't have the protection of their own state government, to give their kids these opt-outs for vaccines in the education system. So anyway, as I'm making that video, and Governor Ron DeSantis was doing a press conference, which actually felt like a rally. It was very energized and uplifting, and a lot of good news. The same time, this West Coast alliance was dropping. And so I'll show you what this came out of the governor's office in Florida yesterday, a new medical freedom agenda campaign. They are creating a MAHA commission in Florida that will be staffed by, it will be led by First Lady Casey DeSantis and our Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins. And they have also banned vaccines statewide. So, hospitals, you don't have like willy nilly patchwork vaccine mandates going on in the state. So that is really a huge deal. And it was just the irony of how both of these things were happening at the same time was pretty funny yesterday. It truly feels like we have two separate countries. And I was digging in a little bit more to the West Coast Alliance because I wanted to see what other Democrats and blue states around the country were saying or thinking, and where might this be going. And I found this Looney and Duff, Senators Looney and Duff. Like, you can't make those names up. But they applaud the West Coast Health Alliance and they call for Northeastern states to follow suit. Uh, I think this is really interesting. And I think this is going to be something for us to watch what's going to happen around the country, because I think you will have this West Coast Alliance is going to grow. I don't know if it will be like a West Coast, East Coast kind of thing, or if they're all going to join forces together and strength in numbers. But this is really interesting. And if you consider, how our country is being divided, and I know it seems, if you're in a blue state, it probably seems worse under Trump. But having lived in Florida for part of Biden's terms, you had the same conflict with a red state and a blue president. So I think that's just a natural thing when you've got, a radical, one way or the other. And I think everything is radical in opposition to the left. They think everything that's not far left is radical right. And so we've been seeing over, I guess, really, I started paying attention when Donald Trump was first in office. And since 2016, I think we've just increasingly seen our country become more divided. Red states are getting, I don't want to say redder, because even here in Florida, our legislature, we've got a huge rhino problem, and that's the same in Texas and Idaho, and it's happening in red states across the country. But by redder, I mean the people. You have conservative people going to red states where there's freedom. You have blue state, people that want to be able to trans their kids are leaving places like Florida and going to, excuse me, and going to states like Washington where they can live that kind of lifestyle. And it's very different here in Florida. I mean, there's obviously those people exist here, but you just don't see it. Like when I lived in Western Washington, you go to the grocery store and, you saw furries in their pajamas, teenage furries in their pajamas with blue hair and pink hair. You just don't see that really down here as much. And I think we're going to continue to see this being shifted, because with this West Coast Alliance, you have people on the entire West Coast that just want to have freedom and be able to make their own medical decisions and other decisions about their lives and for their families, that are going to start making some decisions. So it's going to be interesting. So I'd be curious to see hear what you guys think about that. Leave me messages in the chat. I'm checking out the chat right now. I see Joanne Tolentino in the chat. Joanne has been a Conservative Ladies of Washington member since day one. She is one of our founding members, and she is actually running for school board in the North Shore School District, which is the school district where we were. And that would be a huge win for children and families in North Shore School District. So if you're seeing Joanne's comments on Facebook, be sure to give her a high five and find out how you can support her campaign. Maybe chip in 10 or 20 bucks. I know all of these candidates that are running could use some help with donations. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about, Washington State. Kids are back to school now. I think most of the schools went back after Labor Day, so probably yesterday or Tuesday. And there's a lot of new laws that will take effect this school year. So I want to talk about that. We've been trying to put out some information about it to inform parents so that they can take measures to protect their children Ultimately, if you can, we encourage everybody to pull their children out of the public schools because it's nearly impossible to escape the indoctrination. And one of the things we hear often, and I've been seeing it on our socials today in the comments, I have conversations with my kids. My kids know not to do any of these gender projects, not to go along with this indoctrination. We're going to opt our kids out. That's great if they weren't embedding this subject matter into every single subject in school. We're talking math, science, history. The laws that they have passed want uh, want the school boards and the school districts to adopt curriculum that is inclusive. So it teaches about LGBTQ people and immigrants and all that in every subject. And that's really the point is to make it so that people can't opt out. Like you can opt out of sex ed. Well, that's fine. They don't care because, if your kid has, 5 other periods during the day, they're going to get it, this indoctrination somehow in those other classes. So let's start with Senate Bill 5462. This is the law that was passed in 2024 that mandates LGBTQ plus history in Washington's public schools. Now, before we really get going on this particular topic, I want to say, a lot of people say, well, this isn't happening in my district. If it's not happening in your district or you haven't heard about it in your district, that's great. I would caution you not to call out your district publicly because you don't want to put them on the radar for Olympia. If they're not doing it, that's awesome. Let that go low key. It doesn't have to be in the schools until October. So you probably aren't maybe seeing it yet. I did talk to a friend of mine who is a school board director in Washington State this morning. They called me, and they're not a they, them, but I'm just not revealing the gender. They called me this morning and they said, hey, I saw your post on social media about 5462, and we're really working hard to figure out how we can, report our compliance, because all the school districts have to report their compliance to the Washington State OSPI, the Superintendent of Public Instruction. We want to meet our, we want to be in compliance, but, do what we can to, have it be, I guess, as minimally impactful on the students. And one of the things through this bill, or maybe it's 1296. But one of the bills recently passed also requires to have parents on the curriculum adoption committees. And this school board member was telling me that they can't even get parents to volunteer to be on the curriculum committee. Yet there are people in the school district, parents in the school districts that are like, yes, please go in and go fight this fight for our kids. We need you to fight this fight for our kids. But yet they won't even be on these curriculum adoption committees. So I say that because if you have kids in the public school, even if you don't, if you're a taxpayer, you can do this. They probably would be preferential to parents, but find out about the curriculum adoption committees and try to get on that committee. That is a great way to find out what they are trying to put in the schools and have something to say about it. It's really frustrating as an activist. I know for our team and many other activists that I know, it's really easy for people to want other people to fight for them. It is hard because you have a target on your back and you're going to get hate from the left, some hate from the right. We get that all the time. And you just have to have thick skin and you just have to be in this fight for truth. And truly, as a mom of 4 children, there is no fight more worthy than the fight to protect your children. So just want to give you that encouragement to get in the game, to get involved, find out how you can maybe make a difference. If your kids have to go to public school, that's a great way to find out what's going on. Okay, let's take a look at what is Senate Bill 5462. This passed in 2024. Interestingly, I was going back and forth on X earlier today with my friend Stephen Welliver, who used to be a teacher in Washington, moved to the East Coast, and still keeps an eye on all this stuff like I do. And one of the things he remarked about is there is a youth advisory council that is part of defining what this curriculum needs to be. Let me repeat that. There is a youth advisory council. They are 13 to 18 years old that are deciding what this curriculum should be. They are collaborating with the Washington State LGBTQ Commission. The LGBTQ Commission is appointed by the governor. This was created in 2019 or 2020. It was created with bipartisan support. That means Republicans voted for it as well. They don't like it when I say that, but that is the truth. Those are the people that are determining what this inclusive curriculum is going to be. So the materials must reflect the identities and experiences of racial and ethnic minorities, LGBTQ plus individuals, immigrants and refugees, people with disabilities, women, and diverse religious groups. I'm guessing when they say women and diverse religious groups, they're not talking about biological women and Christians. So we're probably talking about trans women and Muslims and whatever other religious groups there are. So that's a little bit of the background on 5462. And part of it, so the Youth Advisory Council, they're actually LIAC, Legislative Youth Advisory Council. They had a bill in 2020. So both of these were introduced in 2023. Their bill was Senate Bill 5441 for the inclusive materials, and it got a lot of bad press. And so what they did, and this is a sneaky little tactic that they do in Olympia and probably other capitals too, they snuck the wording of 5441 and just incorporated it into 5462 and made it one big bill. Okay, so remember I said this is that's not the one I wanted. Maybe I don't have it. I had all of my graphics uploaded into StreamYard, and then something happened. I had to exit the studio, and this was like 5 minutes before I went live, and all my uploads were gone. So that's not the one I wanted. But the one I wanted just shows every area of every subject matter where it is. So again, you might say you're going to opt out, but it is embedded into every area of subject that your child is going to have in school. And again, you may be in a school district where your school board is going to try to fly under the radar with this, and that is awesome. I would just really caution, don't call attention to that. Keep that really low key. And that's really what we try to do. We talk with a lot of school board directors from around the states who are around the state of Washington, who are really trying to do everything they can to protect kids from this radical ideology. And we really try to keep it on the down low because we don't want to draw any unnecessary attention to those school board directors. Another bill that is taking effect this year is House Bill 1296. We put out a lot of information on this. If you're in Washington, you probably know this bill as the bill that repealed the Parents' Bill of Rights, which was Initiative 2081. And when 2081 passed in 2024, I think there were a few Democrats that didn't vote for it, but most of them voted for it. And the reason that when they voted for it, they all stood up and, I'm all for this. Parents need rights. And if we find out that this gets implemented and any of our kids are, not protected, we'll come back and we'll fix it. And the reason they passed it instead of letting the voters decide is because then they could come back the very next session and repeal it. If the voters decided and passed it, then I think they had to wait 2 years or something. So we knew that was going to happen, and repeal it they did, and they bolstered it up and made it worse than it was to begin with. So it's removed a lot of parent access to a child's education records. The most concerning to me is the mental health and the health records. Truly, I'm not exaggerating. In Washington State, your child could go get an abortion during the school day The nurse will take them. They get the abortion and come back to school and send them on their way home. This happens. It happened in my child's school. And it probably happens way more than we would like to know. They can also do this with gender affirming care because both abortion and so-called gender affirming care are protected healthcare in Washington. Children can get it without parent notification or consent, and they can get housing and all sorts of things to enable that. And another bill that was passed in 2024 allows abortion providers to prescribe the abortion pill with no label, that so it doesn't show what the drug is, who prescribed it. So, let's say your daughter was took the abortion pill and she's, bleeding out on the bathroom floor. And as a parent, you have no idea that she has taken this, and you have no idea what is wrong. And there's no way to really connect the dots unless your child tells you, which hopefully in that case they would. So it's very scary. And, parents need to know these things. And again, they're not, none of this is really all that new. But it's just every session, things really get ramped up. So on that line, I want to show you a post that, well, let's start with this one. If you've been on social media in the last few days, you have probably seen this image, about Washington State kindergarten sex ed. This is really, to me, I guess I didn't get outraged about it because it's been going on for so long, and I knew that. So I was kind of surprised that people didn't know that. And when we shared it on our Facebook page, there were a number of people that were telling us, like, this isn't happening. You made this up. That's not what it means. That's not what the law says. Um, and so I think sometimes people say those things because it makes them feel better if it's not happening. Because if it is happening, then you have to do something about it. So this is happening. The sex ed bill was passed in Washington it was either 2019 or 2020, but there was an effort to repeal it. It was called Referendum 90. And actually the women who, I should say parents, because there were probably some dads involved in that too. But I know there were a bunch of like mama bears who were behind that Referendum 90, who were gathering signatures to repeal the comprehensive sex ed bill that had passed. Jeannie's saying it was 2020. So 2020. And they got more than the necessary signatures during COVID. I mean, these ladies were at churches collecting signatures. They were everywhere. I mean, I remember driving around and I would see them. And I actually met a few really nice ladies that I'm still connected with today through that effort. Unfortunately, it went on the ballot, and because of the way that the laws are written as far as wording, it was written very deceptively. So if you didn't know what was really happening, then you probably would have voted against the repeal. So that was unfortunate. So that happened. That was passed in 2020. And then it got implemented in the 2022-2023 school year. So again, not new. But a lot of these things, they come out and everybody's outraged about it. It's going through the legislature, or it was on the ballot or whatever. And then you kind of forget. I mean, we've got so much going on, and all this news and social media stuff is just coming at you fast. And it's easy to, let it go. Plus, it's not a pleasant thought. Nobody wants to really think that there are this kind of evil going on in our schools to our children. But so that was what we posted. And then, because people were telling me it wasn't happening, I was posting, screenshots of different things in the conversation. And a number of other groups, you had Ari Hoffman and Brandy Cruz and Jim Walsh, and all these other people were starting to see it because it was getting posted so widely. And I think it was on Fox News as well. But the Seattle curriculum, I had posted that on our page, and I think it ended up getting shared or something. But one of the things that got shared in the aftermath of that was this about opt-out requests. And the image that has been shared, and I'd say gone viral, cuts the image off at the bottom of the flag. So it doesn't show you that second half. And so about the opt-outs, There is no option to opt students out of learning about particular identities or groups of people. This guidance is reinforced by OSPI. And that goes back to Senate Bill 5462. It's not a sex education thing. They're calling it inclusive curriculum, LGBTQ history. But they were cutting off this image and saying that you can't opt out of sex ed, when right below that image it says families do have the right to opt out of comprehensive sexual education under state law. Instruction about LGBTQ identities provided for purposes such as bullying prevention or safe and welcoming environments is not part of comprehensive sex education. And thus, there's no opt-out provision. And there is no opt-out provision in Senate Bill 5462, which is now state law. So the reason I think this is really important for people to know is yes, you can still opt your kid out of sex ed, but not being able to opt them out of the inclusive curriculum, really your opt out is homeschool or private school. And I know that's not the answer people want to hear, because it's hard and it's inconvenient and it might cost you something, whether that's time, money. But truly, like, we did a live stream last night with Anne Marie Adams, who is a single working homeschool mom. And, she said, your kids they only get one childhood. And this is probably my biggest regret with my own kids, is that they did have so much indoctrination in the public schools. I wish I had homeschooled my kids, and things are just getting progressively worse in these blue states that have these kinds of policies. They're really doubling down, especially now with Trump. And it's like, it's like the flag, with the bowl, just giving them a bullseye so that they can actually double down on all these policies because they got to protect trans kids. So really, you can't. I understand people being upset about not being able to opt out, but truly, you would be opting your kid out of school, right? Because they're going to embed this into every aspect of education. And I do want to make sure I say that not all teachers will teach this. There are some really good teachers who, whether they're conservative or not, they don't agree with this kind of education indoctrination being pushed on children. And so they're not doing it. And so we, want to, we pray for those teachers, pray for their protection and their strength. And there are some amazing teachers in the school system, but the younger teachers, especially, and people that are coming out of college and getting hired by the school districts, they're going to have this ideology and being pushing this on children. And so these are years that we can't get back. And as Anne-Marie said last night, these kids are going to be your voters. They're going to be your neighbors. They're going to be leaders in our country. And so it really is, even if you don't have kids in school anymore, maybe you have grandkids, or, you just care about your country. This is something that we all need to be concerned about. And, I keep seeing Joanne's name pop up in the chat. And so I'll use her as an example. But, Joanne, I don't even know if she has grandkids in the North Shore School District, but she's a taxpayer and she's concerned about kids. And so she's stepping up in a very deep blue state where the teachers union is really making her life difficult right now. And they really don't like her. And she's put a huge target on her back. And those are the things that we have to do for love of our children and love of our country. So that's my advice on that. And we at Conservative Ladies don't just want to give you the information and run around hair on fire, just sharing information to get the clicks and the engagement and the shares. We really want to share this information with you so that you can be equipped to protect your child and your family, and so that you will engage in your civic duty in some way. And, it doesn't look like like what our team does, we're all just extremely kind of over the top passionate. It doesn't have to look that way for you. Maybe for you, it's going to a school board meeting once a month and maybe making a public comment if there's something on the agenda that you find concerning. Maybe you go to your city council meeting. There's something everyone can do. And like I mentioned with the curriculum committee earlier in the video, that's something that people can do. There's all kinds of ways that you can help out. Maybe you don't have kids or grandkids, but you could offer to support a homeschool family. You could offer to teach the child one of the classes. Maybe you bake or you sew or you have mechanical skills that you could offer to homeschool kids or something. So lots of different ways that people can get involved. It doesn't have to be speaking up or running around with a target on your back. But I do. It bothers me. The social media world bothers me because it's like so many people are more concerned about the engagement because now everything's monetized, right? X, is monetized. So you just want as much engagement on your posts as possible to increase your revenue. Um, but we really that's not helping anything. That's not helping the kids. And that's not being in the fight. That's not fighting the good fight. We really have to be willing to put some skin truly in the game. So there's my little tough love for it, you guys. What else is on my agenda? I know that I don't know if Twig is still here. I was going to touch on oh, Nightwolf is getting censored by YouTube. That's been happening a lot. I posted a video the other day about the transgender surge, and YouTube put a little Trevor Project notice on the video, which is funny. Twig said something about the firearm stuff with the as far as banning, not letting transgender people own firearms. So I just wanted to touch on that for a minute because I saw that before. I saw that comment in the chat before I even went live. And so I did take a second to look it up. It looks like it's just a rumor at this point. I looked at a few different articles about it, but the Justice Department leadership is seriously considering whether it can use its rulemaking authority to follow on to Trump's determination to bar military service by transgender people and declare that people who are transgender are mentally ill and can lose their Second Amendment right to possess firearms, according to one justice official. I don't usually, our whole team, it's kind of our protocols. We don't put out information unless we have something like this. We wouldn't put out unless there was a press release from the DOJ or from somebody in the government that said that this is what they were doing. So to me, it's just a rumor. But another senior official cautioned that any such proposal, should it gain steam, would likely run into legal complications. So that's an obvious one to me. The other thing that I've really been thinking, I have a lot of thoughts on this tragedy shooting last week. But one of the things that, we hear all these cries about mental health. First, we need to come up with a mental health description that everybody agrees on, because you've got these blue states. Colorado has a conversion therapy ban that is going to the Supreme Court, and Nick Brown, the AG in Washington, and several other blue states have sent something to SCOTUS in support of Colorado. And what the conversion therapy ban is, it basically forces therapists and medical professionals to be gender affirming and or gender denying, however you choose to look at that. And so in those states that ban conversion therapy, their version of mental health is to, go along with the lie. So somehow, on a federal level, we're going to have to figure out how we get to a place of sanity when we're talking about mental health, because the left has really taken it to crazy town. So it's the upside down, I'm telling you. But in some good news from the Department of Justice, there was a press release that came out yesterday from Pam Bondi. She has proposed legislation that goes along with President Trump's executive order to ban gender mutilation, which is excellent. And this is, one of the things we see all these executive orders and we get really excited, but they need to be legislated. And so this is exactly what we like to see. This would be huge for people in blue states that have these laws that allow this to happen to children. And I'm using my words carefully because YouTube will do its thing to me. But basically, and all of this is also on our website, conservativeladiesofamerica.com, if you want to do a deeper dive. And we've got links to the Pam Bondi press release. We've also got a link to the text of the proposed legislation. But basically, in a nutshell, it prohibits medical gender transition procedures for any individual under 18 years of age, prohibits puberty blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries. It also allows, and this is the big part, it allows healthcare providers to be sued for performing a medical transition on a minor, and it bars the use of federal funds for such procedures on minors. So this is really good news. Also, for my friends in Washington, Mary Bridge Children's Hospital announced, I think it was this week or the end of last week, that they will not be taking on new patients in their gender affirming care department, section, whatever, clinic. So that is really good. That's a huge win. Seattle Children's Hospital did the same thing, and we've been seeing that around the state. So, I know it's hard because there's a lot of places where, we're not winning, or, crazy stuff is going on, but these wins, especially for kids, are really good. And if we can get a federal law like this passed, that would be really good for children across the country and children who are in these blue states. And it does happen in red states too. I saw somebody reshared. It drives me nuts when people do this. Somebody reshared today a post, a photo from 2022 on X, and it shows a child that's just had gender surgery. She's got the scars on her breasts, and the mom is standing next to her, and the little brother's like standing next to them, like, am I not, like scared if he's next. And this was from, I recognized it because I remember, like, I think we had just bought our house and in Florida, and we were still living in Washington, but we just bought our house, and I saw this, and it was from, it happened in Florida at a clinic in Florida. And so I believe that lawmaking has taken place that's not allowed here anymore. But those are things to know, that it's not just in blue states where this stuff is happening. So those are really good things. I'm just going to look through the chat here really quick. Okay. I wanted to touch on the Epstein files. I did a few videos on these a while back, and well, it's not, the Epstein files aren't really a policy thing, although there is legislation proposed by Thomas Massie now to release the Epstein files. This isn't really in our wheelhouse, but it's something that's very interesting, because you had Trump, and you had Bondi, and you had Cash, and you had Bongino, and all of these people saying we're going to release the files. And then you had Bindergate, when all the ex-influencers went to the White House, and they all got their binders with the, Epstein, 1.0 or whatever. And then it just went away. There's no files. There's nothing to see here. And that was just weird to me, because I think we all know that there's something. And so I'm going to play you this video. It's a clip of Thomas Massie. I think it was yesterday that this was taken. There's a lot of political, like, I think that the White House is really frowning upon his legislation, which has primarily been signed on to by Democrats. I think there's like almost 200 Democrats have signed it, and just a handful of Republicans. And one of the things it really shows to me, and it just kind of makes me think about, is all of the political games that go on, and how corrupt and swampy politics really is. So I'll play this for you, and then we can talk about kind of what do we think the real story is.
Some of the kickback you're getting back from
thank you.
your colleagues. What are some reasons why they don't want to endorse this?
They're being threatened. I mean, look, I've got $2 million of ads running against me back in my district, and it's funded by 3 billionaires. One of them's in Epstein's black book. I mean, this is what happens. Your consultants, your political consultants will abandon you when the White House gets mad at you. The speaker will block all of your bills. They'll shut down your fundraising. This isn't political, but it is. I mean, the opposition to this is very political.
Now, I have had enough experience over the last few years and talked to enough legislators off the record and behind closed doors that I know that these kinds of things go on. I think DC is like a whole like higher level of political swampy madness, but I do tend to think that Massey is being very truthful here, and I think that's. I don't particularly think that Trump is necessarily going to be incriminate. I think his name is in there. I think we all know that his name is in there because they were connected somehow. I don't think he was involved in the crimes, but I do believe there are other people who are probably pretty powerful people, pretty rich people that don't want to get their names out there. And Nightwolf just said DC is the devil's sandbox, and that sounds about accurate. I just this morning called school's the devil's playground. So the devil is having a heyday in America, and it's our job as citizens to speak truth, be involved, don't be complacent, don't just hear about these stories. One of the biggest things is when I tell you guys about these things, I want you to do something about it. I want you to share with people. I want you to get your kids out of public school. I want you to find a way, and our whole team, we all want this. And so you can contact our team at info@conservativeladiesofamerica.com. And if you're trying to figure out schools or you can't get your kid out of school or whatever, you just need support, we're here to help you. If you have other issues, we're happy to help you and help you make connections however we can. We don't want to just be deliverers of information. We want to be activating other citizens to do stuff. And so whatever that looks like for you. Thanks for joining me today, you guys. Thanks, Nightwolf and Joanne and everybody. That's all the names I can see on my screen right now. But thanks everybody else for joining us as well. If you are watching this on replay, thanks so much. Make sure that you subscribe or follow wherever you are watching this. And I do plan to be back. I know I took last week off because I was traveling back from New Orleans from a policy conference. But I do plan to be back next Thursday. I kind of like this earlier time. And now that I'm back in school full time, I think I might do the earlier time as well. So join me next Thursday at noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern. Y'all have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.